Well, greetings and salutations, test takers. Welcome to what used to be called our office hour, but 2025 is now called our weekly Q&A jam session. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, you can register. We do this weekly at deantenneytutoring.setmore.com if you'd like to join us. Kind of a free for all. We just answer questions from people who show up and put them in the chat. So here we go with this week's edition. All right. Well, welcome and greetings. You know how this works. If it's your first time, we'll tell you how it works. You just put whatever questions you have in the chat and we knock them out in the order received. So just put into the chat anything you'd like to talk about, and we will certainly take care of that for you. Or audio. You can do an audio, chat, whatever works. It's going to be a short session, I hope, because I'm more than happy to get out of here.
Let's see. Hey, Dean.
Yeah, Dean.
I got 2 weeks left. Did you get my note about trying to fit a session in before?
No, I did not. I apologize. I've been trying to get out of Las Vegas. So, boy, busy week. I have more cars than drivers, and I left one of my vehicles in Las Vegas, and
Oh,
I made a one-day trip to get it, and then I decided I would stop at the DMV in Arizona, get new license, get that registered. So I've been on the road. So, but I'll certainly check that out, Dean. I never abandon anybody who's already in the queue. So, if you have already invested in tutoring with me, we will find a time that works for you. So I'll send you a regular Zoom invite tomorrow, and we'll figure it out and put it on the schedule.
okay. And then Mike Kavanaugh, the founder of Regiment Securities, my firm,
Mhm.
said to say thank you. He passed the 24 because of your
Oh,
classes.
that's
So
fantastic.
so when I'm done, he wants to fly out and buy you a
I
drink.
love
So.
it. Kudos, General Securities Principle. That's a tough one. That's
Yeah, that's what he said. He goes to, well, and I was going to ask you because he said you had a session where you took the test and you got a perfect on the test.
oh, I don't know about
No,
that.
you did. You got 100% on the
Oh,
exam on the 24 and you shadowed and you
oh,
explained every question. You don't do that on the
oh, that
seven
was
anymore, do you?
I see what you're talking about. I do. If you've been watching the channel, I do explications. It's funny though. Now what seems to be more popular. So when I started, I would just be me, and I'd tell you to hit pause, and then see what I say, and then hit play.
Yeah.
And that we've had some brave candidates since then that have offered to share their session. And so we have two versions of those on the 24 and other ones. We have versions where you can just watch me, and I'm surprised that these are, I guess, more popular. It makes sense. You can watch me and a test taker do it when they give me permission to put it on the
That's what he
channel.
was talking, but he said that saved his butt.
Oh
So
yeah, well
is
yeah, she
it, do
did
you
pretty
have
well.
that on the seven or no?
Yeah, when they run over, she ran over quite a bit. And I charge, good money for the. That's my other thing I should acknowledge in these sessions is if these are free, and I charge $250 an hour for tutoring. So if somebody
Ooh,
books
which
a
I love,
tutoring,
man. That's a bargain.
somebody books a tutoring session like Dean, and he wants it to take place where there's a free thing, then the free thing gets moved, right? So sometimes these will bounce around until I can finally do that. But anyways, in her case, she booked 2 hours of tutoring, then she wanted to do a shared screen final. And I recall, I said, okay, fine. And, we got done. I said, listen, you can either pay me the $250 you owe me for the hour, or you can give me, I don't feel it's a duress, but I said, or you can let me share it with others. She let me share it with others. So good for
So
her.
do you do that in a series seven session at all or
Oh
no?
yeah, I call it, it's a click on your where you book tutoring, Dean.
Yeah.
The other server, when you go to services under tutoring, there's another service called Shared Screen Final. That's
Oh,
where you
okay.
and I do a practice test on any series of that you're doing. And that usually takes about 3 hours, sometimes more, sometimes less. I had a guy who Finder is pretty good about giving you um, working with you who have a learning challenge, and he got 6 hours to do the exam, and he took 6 hours with me to do the shared screen final. Hey, that's the deal. And he said, "Well, Dean, I'm sorry." I go, "Hey, don't be sorry. That's what it's about, simulating your actual exam. And they're going to give you 6 hours." I said, "We got to be on the question. What exam was he taking?" But I figured out we got to be at 35 questions every 90 minutes to make the 6 hours that Finray gave him. And so I didn't put that one on the channel, Dean. The first person who did it, his name was Lauren, and Lauren was so fun. But she said she gave me permission before we even started. She goes, I think that she's actually the one who started that. She said, "Yeah, I think this might be helpful for other people. So you're welcome to recorded. That's where the idea came from to do that.
Got
And
it.
but she was taking so long to answer her exam. The producer and me kind of like, Lauren, nobody's going to want to watch us for 4 hours.
No, he said it saved his butt, so he
Well,
wanted me
what
to
I tell people, you
thank
can
you.
put
So
on YouTube, you can put your speed at like 1.5 or 2 if you want, and
yeah.
that'll speed everything up. So, all right.
One last question before we
Yeah.
get started. Are you taking the over or the under?
What tonight's game?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tough one. I'm going to be bouncing between that game and the New York Knicks and Thunder.
Oh, that'll be a good one.
I'm an NBA fan, and boy, I
Yeah.
just love all these young men we got in the NBA. Don't get me wrong, it's not quite yet for Steph Curry and LeBron and KD to call it a day, but watching some of these young men play is pretty fun. So,
That's what I was telling my wife. I go, the thing I love about Dean Tinney is I said when he's explaining something, he'll relate it to gambling, and I got it right away. It's like so this is a spread, and you talk about the Super Bowl on your recording, and I was like,
Dane, I'll get to your question just a sec, Dane. The other thing when I was moving, I was a floor seat holder for many years for the Warriors before they got really good. I mean, this is years ago. And here in my office, I'm gonna have to give a tour, make a little video, but there's a picture. Baron Davis came down and he slammed on Karolinko, and he turned it, and I was sitting right there where the dunk took place. And both of us at the same got up, went like this, and it was on ESPN, it was in the paper, me and BD. And I used to tell people, they say, well, this is before we got, we became great. They think you're going to win tonight. I said, well, it depends what Baron Davis shows up. If Baron Davis superstar shows up, we can take down anybody. But if BD nightclub until 3 a.m. shows up, and then when we got Steph, we drafted for Steph, and everybody, all my friends were like, God, he's a family guy. He's going to Bible studies. And I said, listen, I'll take it. I prefer that. I prefer that, because we had another guy named Monte Ellis, and he got compromised by Steven Jackson and BD and that whole scene. And I thought, I'll take the family guy. We changed over quite a bit. But one of the things I took from Vegas, the last thing that made it out of my garage was Michael Dunleavy, who's now the general manager. I was sitting on the floor with my friend Johnny, and I had seen Mike out about 1:30 the night before with a young lady, and I took care of his bar tab. Now he's got way more money than I'm ever going to have. It. Anyways, he came up to say thanks, and I said, hey, listen, I just thought you'd look good with your lady. I said, but Mike, you got a lot of negative energy right now. People are booing you. And I said, man, we got to get rid of that negative energy. I said, I'm going to go up to the gift store. I'm going to buy your jersey. I'm going to wear it on the floor tonight. I said, I'm not going to wear it outside the arena because I'll get booed like you, but I'm going to wear it tonight. Anyways, had a great game when we were in the VIP bar, and he came in and he had signed his jersey. And he said, Dean, thanks for your support. And I got the ticket
oh
stub and
wow.
signature. So that I got to find a place to put that there. So I got some paraphernalia from my NBA fandom. All right, let's answer Dave's.
And he said to say your magic phrase was it's too long to be wrong.
Yeah, I get a lot of grief from people in the space. I never knew I had haters until I got on social media. I probably did, but I just didn't know they were out there. And I had a whole guy go on a rant about how ridiculous that I teach test taking tricks, tips.
No.
And I said, so what anyways, I said is there's no way you're going to pass any of the exams with tips and tricks. But when all else fails, it's kind of nice. I mean, I always joke when I was in college, being a good test taker means, somebody could work harder than me and I still might get a better score just because I know some tricks. So,
Awesome.
anyways, this case, that called too long to be wrong is because test writers fall prey. Now, we only use tricks when we don't know the answer. That's the
Right.
first thing.
Right.
But usually, guys who write tests, they start with their correct answer first. And then they reverse engineer their wrong answers, their distractors. And they get a little lazier on the distractors than their proper answer. So too long to be wrong says, okay, that answer, the guy who wrote it really likes it. He really likes it because, like me, he's a jerk and he's baiting you into a bad answer. Like, I bet I'll sucker him with this one. Or it's the right answer. But, whatever the case is, the guy's emotionally invested in that larger answer set. So, yeah, we call that one too long to be wrong. And even people who take exception to my test taking tips and tricks, they get frosted when they work, like the Sesame Street.
I think they're brilliant, so don't ever stop, man.
Thank you, Dean. For the 66, Dean's question: does an administrator have the right from another state to view the books of state those registered in their state? They have what's called reciprocity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way I think about state administrators is power. And, I joke as a resident now of Arizona, as a retail investor, keyword retail investor, I have the protections on the federal level of the SEC, and on the state level, the state administrator. Dane, your question is, can the state administrator of Arizona inspect the books of a state registered in their state? The answer is, how that works is they would first ask you politely. They'd say to the investment advisory firm or broker dealer operating in the other state, I'd like to see your books. And, then you say no. Then they call their buddy, who's in the state administrator of your state where you're domiciled headquarters. This is by for investment advisor, by the way, because broker dealers, you got to let them do it. I mean, because you're registered in the state. So there's about investment advisory firms. And they're going to call that, and I'm going to call you and say, hey, Dane, the guy you're blowing off? He's a friend of mine. And you may not think he has jurisdiction in our state, but he does have reciprocity. And so you're doing business in his state. Next time he calls, I just think you should pretend that's me. And if you don't do it, then I'll call and tell you to do it. And if you don't do it still, I'll take you to court. Right. Now, that's the key point. I don't have a badge and a gun. None of them do. So, I can blow them off, and then they got to go to court. And then he tells the judge, the state administrator, hey, that Dean guy doesn't recognize my jurisdiction in this situation. Can I borrow your marshal? The judge does have a get badge and a gun. He's got the marshal, and then he can give an injunction. So that's kind of how that works. I think it's more likely to be tested this way, Dane, that if I have more than one state as an investment advisor where I'm registered, I have to comply with the state of where my home office is. So I can't, like, if state A says, Dean, you need 35 grand, and that's my headquarters is in that state, or Dean, you have record retention of 5 years. Some other state can't make up some new, or I shouldn't make up, can enforce on me a rule a higher standard than my home state. Right. So whatever my home state is, by the way, it wouldn't matter again if I'm a federally covered advisor, because then they have no jurisdiction over me in any way. So it's only about state covered investment advisors, Dan, where this kind of a situation shows up. I call this jurisdiction in terms of the overall, where do you have jurisdiction? And as a state administrator, you have jurisdiction if anybody is selling things to your retail investors in your state. What that means is the offer was directed to a resident of that state. I have jurisdiction if the offer was originated in my state. I have jurisdiction if it was accepted in my state. So I call all those concepts. Does the state administrator have jurisdiction? And within that category, there are exempt transactions. For example, the state administrator doesn't have jurisdiction for transactions done by officers of the court, sheriffs, trustees in bankruptcies. Be careful. Boy, what a challenge, these NAS exams. I said a trustee in bankruptcy. I didn't say a trustee of a trust account is an exempt transaction. I said a trustee in bankruptcy, right? The administrator, his or her transactions are exempt, so I call that jurisdiction. The other analogy I use, Dane, is I bounce back and forth. Now I don't hope I have to bounce, but I've been crossing the Nevada-Arizona state line many times over the last month trying to transition. In every state you enter, there's a sign that tells you you're leaving Nevada, entering Arizona, or leaving Arizona, entering Nevada. What they're trying to tell you is jurisdiction has changed. And, what are the rules, right? For example, I told my brother to buy me a firearm so I could practice to do target practice with one. That would be good bonding. And so I gave him discretion to buy me any kind of a pistol he wanted. He gave me the pistol and he said, Dean, don't take it to California. I said, why? He said, because it's a felony to have this pistol in California because there's a 15-round clip in it. I said, woo! So whether it's liquor laws or gun laws or securities laws, it's important to know what state you're in. Louisiana, they have some funky liquor laws like, yeah, go ahead, take your daiquiri home with you while you're driving home. So I joke, California, when I first moved to Nevada, I said, when's the last call? And they said, there isn't one. Oh my God, I got to toss myself out of here. I'm used to like California. Hey, last call, 1 a.m., time to go home. Here in Arizona, I'm what a fish out of water here because I'm not an off-grid zombie apocalypse prepper libertarian guy, but a lot of these men and women are. Anyways, I can't tell you how many people are carrying firearms. And the first time I saw somebody with a pistol, I said, "Well, thank you for your service." And they go, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're a police officer, right?" He goes, "No." And he said, "Dean, it's open carry in Arizona." I said, "Wow." I said, "Well, it's not loaded, is it?" He goes, "Well, what good would it do if it's not loaded?" I'm like, woo, my friend's wife, who delivers my water, she showed up today because he's, off doing whatever. And her name's Bobby Joe, and she's got her pistol strapped to her side. I'm like, okay, hey, welcome. All right. Any other questions here? Is that it? All we got is Dean's question about the administrator.
I
Dean, I have a video on that called, I have two videos kind of in that area. I have one about jurisdiction, just called Jurisdiction, and I have a very popular one called Who's Your Daddy? And what that video is about is, do you answer to the SEC or do you answer to the state? Never both. And the reason that's important is because the questions are different based on whether you're being asked about a state investment advisor or a federally covered advisor. Right. So that's kind of important in those questions and ask a question to figure out who you're being asked about. I always use the analogy of a play and a cast of characters. I like when I go to a play and there's a playbill and it has a list of the cast of characters. Sometimes it has a synopsis of the acts and scenes. And I go, who's that guy again? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Iago. Okay. I remember who he is. So, as a test taker on a NAS exam, I always like to just read it once and say, are they asking me about the issuer in registering securities? Are they asking me about how an investment advisor is registered? Are they asking about an investment advisor rep? You got to be careful on that one because sometimes those questions start with the investment advisor and then it makes a turn to the investment advisor rep. And that's important because it depends on whether you're an investment advisor rep of a federally covered advisor. Let's hope you are, Dane, because life is so much easier. Or are you an investment advisor rep of a state covered advisor? Oh my God, then there's all kinds of junk, de minimis. And so that's important. And are they asking me about a broker dealer? Are they asking you about an agent of a broker dealer? Right? Because those are the things that have to be registered. Securities, investment advisory firms, investment advisor reps, broker dealers, agents of broker dealers. So that's kind of important in terms of, the exam. And then, I always like to, before I jump in, boy, particularly in NAS exams, I then like to read the full question. I call that RTFQ. And then I like to RTFA, read the full answer set. I like to see what answers are available to me. Sometimes if it's a really long one, I like to read the answer set first, just to, before I read the whole paragraph to figure out where it ends and know what my answers are going to be available to me. I like to read that last sentence first, just to see where that paragraph ends.
You gave me that idea and it's been working.
Yeah, because sometimes that paragraph, sometimes by the time I get to the end, I can't remember what started with. So you have plenty of time. We're not trying to sort people by how quick they think. So you shouldn't have any kind of a time constraint. If you do, it's because you're turning aim and shoot, point and click questions into judgment questions that aren't there. Right. So I'll link to a couple of good videos. Are you taking, Dane, the 65 or 66?
I'm taking a 66 and I'm taking a retake. I just took it a few weeks ago and I really messed up on the laws and regs and the suitability.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and some of these questions that I have tonight are questions that I saw that kind of confused me. So I
Yeah.
wanted to get just a realization of how you thought about these
Let me
questions so
give
I
you
can
one
kind
more
of,
thing. I take the liberty of changing what NASA publishes in their test specifications and what test prep vendors model, which you just said, law and regulations. What that really is, and I just gave you a synopsis of it, is laws and registration, not laws and regulations, right? So, sometimes I'll teach a 66 class for Kaplan, and Kaplan does not give me the authority to delete slides from presentations because they know the deck would just, it would immediately be less down 100 slides. That being said, I can add to slides, and I always, every time Kaplan says laws and regulations, I just take out my annotation tool or my PowerPoint slide. I change it to registration, law and registration, right? By the way, that's what you're taking the 66 for, right? To be registered as an investment advisor rep. So that whole category of regulations is really registration. And then the law part of it is unethical business practices, right? That's what that is, right? And so that would be, disclosures and not selling dividends and not making breakpoint sales. About half of the 66 is laws and registrations. And the other half is, investment vehicles. You got to respect the 66. And I think sometimes what happens is people, they should have a pep in their step when they pass their 7, no doubt. You should feel good. But then what happens is they think the 66 has more overlap than it actually does. There is some overlap, but they think, oh, this looks familiar. But there's also stuff on the 66 that does not show up in any way on the 7, particularly like analytical methods, discounted cash flow, present value, internal rates of return, all that kind of stuff. Now that won't kill you, but that's stuff that is different. So you got to make sure you do that. Now the other thing I would warn you is a test of your resiliency. Nobody really cares when you pass your test. My best guy, not a good test taker. I mean, he used to go out and tell people, hey, if anybody knows this stuff, it's me. I had to take these damn tests 5 times. People invest with you because they like you and they trust you, not because you can pass a test. I used to joke with people, and it wasn't really a joke. My reps would say, are you teasing or not? I go, that depends. If you got over 90 in the days when we gave scores, I would say, Dan, I think I ought to get rid of you right now. And then you said, why? I said, well, gee, if you get over 90 on one of the exams, all you've proven is you're a bigger jerk as the person who wrote the exam. And I'm trying to spend more time with you than my family. And I don't want to spend that much time with you if you get over 90. Second point, Dana, is I'm supposed to supervise you. And how am I supposed to supervise you if you're smarter than me? You're always maybe one step ahead of me. I think I should just get rid of you now and make my life easier. So I told you, my guy who took it 5 times, his name is Troy. He's a great producer. I said, man, people like to see how you respond to a little setback like that. And I thought, man, if this guy can deal with that kind of negative feedback, he's going to be great in sales. Now, maybe not all of us are in sales, but in sales, you're going to get a lot of rejection. So I figured, if he can do that. I just had a young lady, she finally got it all done, but boy, she got a couple of reverses. Her testing journey was hard and difficult, and she's going to be joining us next Tuesday to share her journey. And I think it's harder. I don't think I'm talking out of school. I think I have her permission to share this. But her dad is a big producer. And oh my goodness, that's embarrassing, right? It will be one thing if you miss your mark, and then it's another when, the whole office, knows your dad, and I don't know her well enough to call dad and say, will you please lighten up on her? I mean, you're not putting in her good spot. Why don't we try rah instead of fear? Both are good motivators. Fear and greed are great motivators. But I think her dad was a little bit too much on the fear side, not enough on the rah side.
He's a top producer. He's a grinder.
Yeah. How different? So Dean asked about suitability and how different is it? So let's knock those 2 out.
So on suitability, what's interesting, and I've been working in the business
right.
since. So I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but there's so many times where I really believe that I'm right in the answer that I selected, but it's wrong. How they're like really close. So is there any?
No, I got to tell you, the disadvantage that we have as older men, I think, or older people in general, come with a lot of baggage, and we're prejudicial. And I do the same thing on suitability questions. The 3 styles of questions are recognition questions, practical application questions, and judgment questions. And, about 10% of the exams are judgment questions. Those are things you're just not going to get with a flashcard. And I too, Dean, make mistakes. Like I always miss the over-equitized person because I always believe in that. And, if I could talk to the test writer guy, I'd say, I think he should have more equity than asset allocation. So yeah, the judgment questions, you get to a 50-50. I would prefer you stick to your guns on that and not try and suck up to a judgment question. Just go with your guns. Say, man, I'm taking that. That's my answer. And so what if I miss it? I got enough points elsewhere to deal with that. And suitability questions are almost always judgment questions.
So, and I'm guessing, what's your best suitability session that you?
Well, here's what I would say. I have on the 7, I have an entire suitability playlist. I have a suitability practice exam I wrote. You can watch me and students do suitability exercises. But in general, I would say, I find when people struggle with suitability, it's because they haven't laid enough base knowledge on the investment vehicles. Because if you have the investment vehicle down, like, partnerships are not liquid. right? I think of the car business. I was joking about the sports car that's been in my garage for 6 years. And that sports car is totally unsuitable for my off-grid living situation. But it's been sitting in my garage for 6 years, and I say, Dean, got tired of begging people to buy this damn car. It's 24 years old and it's pristine because it's lived its life in a garage most of its life, and it's aged a lot better than a lot of young ladies I've dated. And the guy who went to put the battery in it, he said, "Oh man, this is beautiful," because I got to get a battery in it. And then I drove it down to the Toyota dealership, and I said, "Listen, I need you to drop the tank and put some fresh gas in this thing, change the oil." And everybody, they see and they go, "Wow." Oh yeah, that was the first one off Japan, and I paid extra for it. It's the one I use in the story about call contracts.
Oh, that's the one?
Yeah, I call it a Bumblebee. It's bright yellow. It's a beautiful car. But I'm a big boy. I still fit in it, but as a big boy, it's like driving a go-kart, man. So, anyways, if you're a sales guy at Toyota, so I told the service advisor, I'd say, listen, I need a vehicle that's more suitable for off-grid living. And so why don't you hook me up with somebody at the Toyota dealership? Now, the obvious thing that he should be looking for me is a pickup, right? So, what I would do is if I were going to run that dealership, I would test my guys on all the cars on the lot, the inventory. And I'd say, "Oh, you're a soccer mom. Let's go look at a van." "Oh, Dean, you want a car that's capable of high speeds and second gear. You need to go over there to that Ferrari dealer. We don't have those here on the Toyota lot." Right? So that I think product comes first. If you understand the investment vehicles, that base, then those suitability questions become a little easier. Now, in terms of suitability, your people, here's the three big ones: growth, income, and safety. Right? And then we should know what investment vehicles provide growth. Here we should be thinking common stocks that pay no dividends because they're reinvesting. Right? We should be thinking probably like NVIDIA. I mean, poof, I watch Jensen Huang and I go, my God, they're taking over the world. Right? And that's a growth stock. You're not going to buy NVIDIA because you expect them to give you a dividend. You expect them to, I don't know, what's this chip, the Blackwell chip? And then, crazy. That's a growth stock, right? I'm thinking oil and gas exploratory. That's a little aggressive, right? So once you get the investment objective, now you got to go back in your brain housing group and say, okay, what are the arrows I have in my quiver for that particular thing they're seeking? Income, I should be thinking preferred. I should be thinking bonds, right? Maybe they say on the test, they want income monthly. I should go, oh, Ginnie Mae. That's the only thing we have that pays income monthly. So that's how I would attack suitability. Safety of principal, immediately I'm shopping for treasuries. They say inflation, immediately I'm thinking tips. I'm thinking common stocks again. So that's what I would say in terms of suitability. Now, if you're taking the 63, I don't think 63 is about suitability. Dean,
No, that was a second question.
Okay.
I just
Well, here's
heard
our
you
second
talking
question. So
about
on
him.
63, how is it different? Again, this just drives me nuts. I think this is so asinine. 63 and 65 is the equivalent of a 66. And so 63 makes you an agent of a broker dealer, period, full stop. So a lot of times when people pass their 6, I say, what's your next testing victory? Is it 63 or 63, 65? Right? If they pass their 7, I say, what's your next testing victory? 63 or 66? Now, here's what I think is asinine. There are people out there who suggest people take a 63, 65 instead of a 66, which I just think is asinine. I think if Dane fails, let's say it's his third time. I'm not trying to put on negative vibes. He misses that 66 for his third time. I would say to Dane at that point is a plan B, Dane. I've done this several times over the years and it's always worked. Is instead of waiting 6 months, Dane, why don't we just go take a 63, 65,
Yeah.
which Dane is the equivalent of a 66, and you don't have the 30-day wait period. Now, it would be asinine to do that as anything other than a fallback position.
Right.
That shouldn't be Dane's original idea to go do that. There are people that suggest that Dane do that instead of his 66. I go, why would you do that? The 66 is 100 questions, the 65 is 130 questions, plus the 60 on the 63. It's just doing it. Now, the reason they created the 66 is because I'm old enough to, tell you this, that people got mad taking a 63, 65 because there was so much overlap. And the overlap it comes from, and here's the answer to your question, Dane, the Uniform Securities Act. The Uniform Securities Act is the Uniform Securities Act. Whether we test you on the 63 about the Uniform Securities Act, or the 65 about the Uniform Securities Act, or Dane's 66. And so how equivalent is this? I believe right now, Dane could go take a 63 and pass based on his score on a 66. Right? I'm not suggesting he do that. But again, the Uniform Securities Act is the Uniform Securities Act. So that's where the overlap is. What the 63 doesn't have is a whole bunch about investment advisory firms, investment advisory reps, because 63s are just agents of broker dealers, period, full stop. That's all they are. You aren't representing an affiliated investment advisory firm. So I would tell you how different is the 63? Well, as it relates to the Uniform Securities Act, it's the same damn test. The content is exactly the same. Shh. I hope nobody who was in this class today is watching this, but I used the 66 slide deck to teach the 63 today. I couldn't find the 63 deck, so I just went to the 66 deck, Uniform Securities Act. It's the same stuff, right? Now they're going to watch it. Ah, you tricked us. They go, no, hey, look, it's the same.
So for us, do you think, because, we're all equities and debt, and we're managing some funds, but it's like, is it because of the blue sky laws when we're doing PPMs and stuff?
Cross state lines, yeah. Remember that whole thing about crossing a state line?
Yeah.
Right? You got to get, I say, listen, welcome to my state. Our regulatory framework is based on that, right? That there's,
Sure.
I joked, Dane, are you going to go to a state prison or a federal prison? Dane, if you violate 33, fraudulent distribution of securities to the public under 33, think Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street. He went to Taft. He went to a federal penitentiary.
I heard federal's nicer though.
Well, Club Fed and Taft is Club Fed. I had a friend of mine. Listen, you got to really mess up to go to prison as a white collar guy.
Yeah.
And your point, it's usually a nicer place, but he went to prison for criminal tax evasion. He's such an idiot. Anyways, he drove himself to prison. I go, why did you ask me to take you down there, Jim? And anyways, he left his car there, and then his wife asked me if I would go get the car. I said, what an idiot. I mean, he's an idiot to go to jail anyways, but he's also an idiot. He was making hundreds of thousands of dollars and not paying his taxes. By the way, again, you got to really try hard, because even that doesn't usually land you in prison. So you'd have to, people say, oh, Dean, I'm afraid I'm going to go to jail for, criminal tax evasion. I go, that's tough to do. I know the guy who did it, but boy, you got to try really hard, because you can come up with a payment plan. You could do all kinds of things. But anyways, when I went to pick up his car, I was going to visit him, and I forget what I said. I said, hey, I'm picking up my friend's car, and, I like to visit. And then the guy responded, is your friend incarcerated here? I said, ooh, that's such a harsh word. I said, well, no, I think it looks like he's kind of on vacation. I mean, your point, right? There's some tennis courts out there, so anyway, so Jordan Belfort is out of prison right now. He's doing sales training, and he's doing crypto.
Really?
Yeah, he's still out there. And I had a person who was telling me how much he loves this Jordan Belfort guy, played by Leonardo in the movie. And the guy who wrote the screenplay said he didn't want to get into the securities part of the story because he didn't think it was as exciting as sex and drugs and, rock and roll. So he, instead of going over 33 of the Uniform Securities Act, he decided as a screenwriter to have Leonardo look at the screen and say, was all this illegal? And respond by saying yes, so they could get on with the story they wanted to tell, right? By the way, I think it's hilarious that he wrote the memoir while he was in Taft, and his cellmate was a guy named Tommy Chong of Cheech and Chong. And Tommy Chong said, man, you got some great stories. You ought to write a memoir. And he goes, hey, why not? I got time on my hands, So anyway, Scorsese, when he turned into a movie, the movie was made with dirty money. And the government, who's still the guy who, the government's after for money laundering, is a Chinese guy out of Malaysia. It was a major, major fraud. And he's still on the lam. But when they were asking Leonardo Scorsese, didn't you think this was odd? This Chinese guy that to clean the money, they set up a fake, well, it was a real movie studio, but the whole purpose of the movie studio was to launder money. And they thought, man, we could probably launder hundreds of $1 millions in Hollywood and nobody would even know. kind of a good idea, right? First stage is placements. You got to come up with a place to put your money. And anyways, with Scorsese and Leonardo gave back the gift the Chinese guy gave him. Yeah, he said, because he bought him like a Humphrey Bogart Oscar statue in the secondary market. He gave it to Leonardo. He bought one of his model girlfriends like a grand piano. I mean, this guy was spending money. He paid Britney Spears $10 million to come sing Happy Birthday to him, flew her in on a helicopter. And, all these people said, well, yeah, we thought it was odd. I thought it was great. Jordan Belfort knew he was a crook because Jordan Belfort was asked to promote the movie. And he said, no, I'm on probation and game recognizes game. And I think you are, not on the up and up. And so I'm staying away from you. You can do whatever you want with my screenplay. By the way, the economics made no sense. And they asked Scorsese and Leonardo, they said, that's why we love the guy. He didn't care how many Lamborghinis we wrecked or, what the budget was, which was a hint that, it's kind of different. I told that story. This guy said, well, they had a Blackstone, Schwartzman. He paid the Rolling Stones to come sing Happy Birthday to him. I said, well, listen, we know where his money came from. He's a billionaire guy. He owns, billions of dollars of Blackstone stock. This guy, who's this guy? From Malaysia. We're in Malaysia. Oh, by the way, Goldman Sachs paid hundreds of millions for not knowing their customer. The managing director of Goldman got in trouble because, he tried to make the argument that this guy we're in Malaysia. And so the rules in the US do not apply. That's a 24 test question, by the way, that you can't arbitrage regulatory framework. Anything that's illegal in the US is going to be illegal elsewhere if you're, a US citizen. All right. So let's see. I got a loaded question. Landon, it's your turn. So what was your loaded question? I love your dedication. Looks like you're coming to us from your automobile. You there, Landon?
Well, I'm not driving, thankfully. You hear me?
You got good lighting, but you got terrible
Yeah.
audio. I think that's some of the best lighting I've ever seen in an automobile.
Yeah, right.
Oh, we lost him.
I said, what does he have, a Ring camera on his dash?
I don't know.
One of those Ring
He
lights.
looks better than we look.
I know.
There he is. He's back.
Oh.
Hello?
Did that work? Hello?
Yeah, your audio is terrible.
Using
Go ahead and give it a shot, though. Let's see if we can do something with it.
okay, yeah. I took the Series 66 and look, can't hear me at all.
I
Driving
can hear
somewhere
you.
with
You're
my
breaking
wife.
up.
Okay, yeah, my connection's also really bad. I'm using the hotspot on my phone.
Can you? Yeah.
Turn off your video.
I can
maybe.
type it if you'd rather.
Yeah, turn off your video. That's a good idea. I don't know what the
Yeah.
bandwidth is.
Okay.
Hello?
Does that help at all?
It
Yeah,
does?
Hear me
Wow,
all?
man, Dean, I'm impressed. OG
Okay.
knows how to turn off.
I own a couple tech companies, man.
Man,
Thank
that's
you, Dean.
crazy. That was a simple solution. I would have never thought of that. Okay, Landon, we got you now on audio.
Yeah, I can turn this light off in my face. So I took the 66 3 times now, and I'm coming to the end of my 6-month hiatus, 180
Okay.
days.
Now, did you hear first? I'm going to hear your question here. You go good audio.
Yeah,
Your recommendation, if you miss it again, remember what I told Dane, I would immediately go for a 63, 65. I would do it so quick that by the time you told him you missed your 66, you had the 63, 65. Dane comes in, he says, Dean, I got good news and bad news. I say, Dane, he goes, what do you want first? I said, I don't know. What's the bad news? And Dane says, yesterday missed my 66. I go, what's the good news? You say, I took the 63, 65 this afternoon and I'm good to go again. Woohoo! Right? Okay, so what's your question?
Yeah, that would be great. If I had known that at the time. I just wanted to kind of get your opinion. I don't really know where to start again. I got a 72 on my 66 the last time I took it. I know.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm basically middle of the road on everything.
Okay, so who's your test prep vendor? Let's start there.
I went through Kaplan. I had Mark Esposito.
what's your
I did his
Q&A
live
usage like?
class.
Okay, did you have Esposito? Who was your Kaplan instructor?
He was my Kaplan instructor.
Esposito? Love Espo. Okay.
Yeah.
What is your QBank usage?
Very heavy.
Okay, so
I didn't use it a lot for the first time, and then the last 2 times I used it very
so
heavy.
here's my first recommendation. I got some coming after it. My first recommendation is let's do a practice test just to see how much residual value still is there, how much you've retained from the misfortunes, So let's just
Yeah.
start. We don't really care what that score is. We're just trying to get a mark to see how much is up there. Now, the reason I asked about your test prep vendor, and this recommendation would be no different if you told me STC or Pass Perfect or whatever, is I think as much as I love Esposito and as much as I love Kaplan, we might want to have a different voice this time. It's kind of like a coach who loses the locker room. Don't tell Espo I said this because he'll be mad, you know. But maybe a different voice is helpful. And what I mean by that is, I think what I would do is to recommend, assuming you have the resources. I know not every brand new test taker, baby broker has resources, but if you do, maybe buy STC would be my recommendation.
STC. Okay.
Yeah, buy their 66. And then I would decide. So now that's my second recommendation. Get a new test prep vendors, get some fresh questions. So you got to do your practice test, see how much is there. You're welcome to send me an email, dean@guruexamprep.com, and just, send me that score, pop on Tuesday live or the weekly Q&A jam session we're doing now and tell me where you're at, what's going on. I'll do that. Now that you get your ST materials, here's the fork in the road you've got to decide as a test taker. One way is to say, okay, I've done this intellectual inventory and I think there's some things that I do know already. And, I need to find some more points. I mean, I got a 72. It's not like I'm clueless. Usually those kind of scores, and I didn't ask Dane his scores, I really don't believe those are knowledge deficit. I believe there's some other reason we're missing the mark. It could be changing answers. It could be, test taking anxiety, whatever it happens to be. It's not you to know this, and I'm dating myself, but before there was a 30-day wait period, I will tell Dane and I would tell Landon just to cue the damn thing up again and take it again and stay down there until they got a draw they could pass. And
Yeah, that was mainly why I decided to stay with the
yeah,
66.
now they
Just
make
wait
you
out the
wait
6
30 days.
months.
Yeah, now
Well,
they make you wait. Yeah, so they make you
yeah.
wait. So anyways, that being said, or you say, okay, I'm just going to pretend that I never suffered that misfortune. I'm just going to start all over again, pretend I don't have this misfortune, and I'm going to study again. I'm going to give thought to what I did last time in terms of my study effort, how I'm going to tweak it a little bit. I think that's the preferred route. Now, that being the preferred route, Landon, that means I'm going to suggest what I tell every new student to do, which is read your new book, STC, cover to cover, and as
Okay.
close to one setting as possible, just so you see what's in there. Again, that'll help you know what's fresh, what's not still fresh, right? You say, oh, yeah, I remember this. And it'll be, different voice than Kaplan in a good way, right? We don't want to get so many voices that, we're clouding our own mind. But, that's what you want to do. Read the book, do the quizzes. Now, what I would do is I would do unit 1, let's call it unit 1 or chapter 1, whatever STC calls it. I do the reading, I do the chapter quiz or check. I do 25, 30 questions. If I get a 70% plus, 75 ideally, I'd move on to chapter 2. Pay attention.
Okay.
When I'm done with chapter 2, I do the quiz. I do not move on. If I get 75, I do not move on. Now I do a combined quiz, custom quiz of unit 1 and unit 2 together. You always want to bring up the caboose because when you have a long study plan, what can happen is by the time you get to the test date, you forgot the stuff you did like 8 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
every time you do it, same thing. We do chapter 3, unit 3, whatever you call it. We do a chapter quiz. We get 75%. We don't get 75%. We do remediation. We go back, we read, we watch a video. That's what remediation is. Lay some more base. I had the person today and I said, you're not going to want to hear this, but you need to do remediation. You shouldn't be doing practice tests because you don't have enough knowledge base right now to know what you're being asked and know what the answers are. And he was blaming his test prep vendor. And I said, you don't want to hear this, but that ain't on your test prep vendor. That's on you. Right. I mean, he had STC and he bought Kaplan and he wasn't doing all that great on STC and he's doing worse on Kaplan. I said, the variance isn't because of Kaplan and STC. The variance is you. You're the one who's causing the point difference there. And so you got to address that. You shouldn't do another practice test from either of them until you lay some base. So you do the remediation, chapter 4, quiz, combined quiz, move on. And then you're moving, matriculating down the field into scoring position, as we say. Right about 7-10 days out from your new test date, you should switch to doing practice tests, not to learn again, to do intellectual inventory. So what I mean by intellectual inventory is, I told you I wouldn't worry about that first score, but about 7-10 days out, I say, okay, what's your score? Are you at risk? And are you not at risk? Rinse and repeat. You shouldn't be doing more than one practice test a day. So 7, 10 days out, I say, Dean, okay, we're 7, 10 days out from go time. How many practice tests am I going to see from you? Now, if he says 14, I'm going to say, that's outrageous. No. I had a guy who was bragging to me that Landon, he did 4 practice tests in one day. I said, what a waste of your day.
Yeah,
I
that's a
mean,
lot.
'cause that means you probably don't, the 4 score isn't reliable. We don't know. We need reliable scores. Tough love. I had a young lady today. I said, when we reconvene, I want a practice test score. I want no excuses. You're telling me that, you did it at lunch, and she was kind of hinting that she should get 5 more points as extra credit for having done it at lunch. I said, well, that was stupid. You shouldn't do this at lunch. I want no excuse about this practice test. I want you to do it when you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You need to carve out the 3 hours. You need to walk the conference room and do the damn test. And then you got to remediate. In my case, I like to say, maybe 3 or 4 practice test scores, and then we're hoping that last one is in the mid 70 range. I had somebody, the other thing I told this guy today that I said, I prefaced it, but you're not going to like to hear this, but if your scores aren't moving, again, that's on you. And I think it's because you're not remediating. You're just kind of like a mice in a maze, and you think you're going to get some cheese by doing these practice tests. No, you gotta stop, and you got to take a strategic pause, and you got to do the remediation, because you're not going to improve on every practice test score, but you're certainly trying to do better. We don't need a whole bunch. I always joke inch by inch, right? We're trying to just get incremental improvement. A lot of people have a plateau, and then at some point, it's aggravating because you don't jump from like 72 to 80. People hit a plateau, and then so I tell people sometimes, not often, but I said, you're working too hard. You're too on top of this thing. So I need you to take a day off tomorrow and come back to it. And almost every time somebody's working hard and those scores are not improving, I can say, hey, refresh and reset, take a day, come back, and their score will pop because now their brain's a little fresher. The other thing, Landon, and take it for what it's worth. Sometimes, this is for Landon, this is for Dave. Sometimes it is a blessing not to be too smart, to not be able to outsmart yourself. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dane and Landon have enough brain power to outsmart themselves, to use their own brain against them. I was joking that, making a video like with that title, like, if you are too, should feel blessed if you aren't smart enough to outsmart yourself. But I know that the people who aren't able to outsmart themselves would probably take it personal. What are you saying?
That's my
Yeah.
when I took my real estate my real estate exam, my coach said he goes, stupid people pass the real estate exam.
I take it for what it's worth. I told you I don't believe Dane and Landon. I don't believe those high misses are a function of not being dedicated, not being disciplined, and not being organized. I think it's some other variable, and that's what's so much more frustrating about it, right? If you miss it with like a 50, well, then we know what we need to do, right? When you miss it with those high scores, it's a little tougher. So I hope that was helpful, Landon. Is there anything else I can add to that?
No, that's good. I will definitely start using the.
Next question. Dean asks, is Notman practice diagnosis?
So what I've been doing, I think I talked to you about this a few sessions ago, but what I was doing was I would do like, I would do a refresh, and then I would do all my practice exams, but I would do like 3, then 4, then 5, then I would do a whole half of the book, right?
Yeah.
Like, mix them up and do them that way. And then finally I started creeping from high 60s to mid 70s.
I love it. I'm gonna steal that. I love creeping. I like it. Creeping's a good word, right?
But then they told I don't know if you know Tom Kelly, but he's a coach over there. So he told me, or he's an instructor, and he told me, he goes, hey, this weekend, because you got 2 weeks left, I want you to start doing diagnostic exams. So is there what's the sequence relevancy or
diagnostics? So at Kaplan, we call it a performance tracker.
Okay.
So diagnostics are to discover your areas of weakness.
Oh, okay.
So that's not an intellectual inventory, but you should be doing the same on practice tests. So when we call it a diagnostic, it's kind of a tool for you to say, okay, I'm missing these questions. I think it's easier if we're missing a particular type of question. So when I do like a shared screen final, I say, well, as your tutor, you're missing these type of questions. But actually, that's a good thing because we know this is what you need to work on. You know, this is the fifth time you've encountered this question and you've answered incorrectly. So we've identified this, and you know, in this case, I say you take your, we're taking notes. I say, put a note. You need to review types of orders.
Yeah, got
If
it.
you're consistently not getting this buy, stop, sell stuff down, and so you know, so you want to be active as you're doing those diagnostics or practice tests. Notman calls it diagnostics. They also have benchmark. Notman is a very good vendor. I mean, they're white glove.
Yeah, they're really good.
They're white glove vendors, and you know they charge extra for it, but rightfully so. I mean, I was telling a Kaplan guy, he was kind of talking about how much.
And they told me that the practice exams or the tests
They're tough. And
are harder. They're harder.
yeah. So is Kaplan. So there's a big the variance is, you know, I didn't want to tell this guy who was, you know, I told you he was complaining about that variance between STC and Kaplan. I didn't say this, but I was going to say, and Kaplan is closer to the actual exam. So I wouldn't be as worried if you got a 70 on Kaplan, you got a 50 on, you know, STC, as I am that you got a 70 on, you know, STC and you got a 50 on Kaplan, right? So, but Notman's a fine firm. I don't think you're going to have any problem. By the way, same thing. This person was talking about Notman and he was as a 66. And I said, again, that's not on Notman. That's on you. He was, you know, you know, not it's called Notman Marks. And Brian Marks is a cool guy. He's actually started showing up in social media, which is kind of, you know, you'd think as the head of the organization, he would have better things to do. I'm not going to say that. If you're watching, Brian, I don't mean that as a dig to you, but I'm happy that you're contributing in social media. But, you know, he's getting a little, he's uncloaking a little bit because I noticed today he said, I run Notman Marks. I said, oh, you're coming out of the closet, you know, who you are. I don't think there's any shenanigans with him, you know, playing Brian Marks, you know, securities instructor. How can I help? And I'm very impressed that he's even playing that game. So in our 24 Reddit, I said, hey, you know, we have the honor of Ryan, the guy being here, so you can ask him. You don't need to ask me about Notman. Failed the 66. Well, it looks like a night for 66 misses, right? We got 66 miss night. There we go. I love it, Tyler. That's right. We're all in the same boat. So listen, our goal is on the weekly Q&A jam session that this boat has docked. And you guys have, you know, walked off the 66 boat on the dry land again. I joke. Right now, you guys are all stuck in the Series 66 fantasy land. You know, no wonder I'm demented. At least when you guys pass, you get to leave 66 fantasy land. I'm stuck here permanently. I never get to leave. So what was your score? If you don't want to mind sharing, Tyler, did you come?
I got a 66 on the 66.
A 66 on the 66.
Go buy a lottery ticket, man.
I know.
Like I say, you know, nobody cares once you pass. Now, I always tell people when they miss the mark, Tyler, Landon Dane, is it career threatening? And maybe the third time it gets career threatening, but usually firms, I find most firms 60 plus do let you go down there again because they know, like Dean knows, that isn't that you didn't put in the work. It could have been a face of death draw. I'm wishing for all three of you this next time a dream draw. Everything you studied shows up and you go, woo, I don't know what the problem was, right? So there's a lot of variables in there. And then, like I say, some people really do suffer test anxiety. I have a guy today I was working with, you know, he's taking his 24D. And I said to him, I said, man, you are one handsome guy. I mean, he is, you know, he's got you know, I feel bad. I'm off grid my lumberjack shirt. And he's got, I don't know, it looks like a $600 shirt. And he's just a beautiful looking man. And then he said to me, he said, well, Dean, I kind of want you to be my accountability partner. And I said, okay, you are an ugly son of a bitch. Anyways, I think he's a brilliant guy. He's just a terrible test taker. And, you know, that happens. So, I mean, you know, 3 times, 4 times. I had a guy today, I was another guy. He got they're really good on this. He gets more time because he has a learning disability. And he actually failed 3 times. I haven't heard of this before. And they didn't give him the 6-month wait. And they give him the 6-month wait because he's almost blind. And they were supposed to, as an accommodation, have for him, I forget what it's called. It's like a Zoom package that makes it easier for people with sight disability to, perform on these exams. And they didn't have it. He took it anyways. And then he said, well, hey, I told you this, you had promised me this accommodation. And then I show up and it's not there. And so he gets to go take it again. But listen, same thing. He's a smart guy. He has a disability on top of a test anxiety. So, that's a tough road for sure. The first time he told me, I think I told you this story, Dean, he had a reader that they gave him a reader to read him the questions. And, and then he told me he's not going to ever do that again because FINRA gave him a reader who knew nothing about this stuff. And so kind of didn't know how to put the commas in, or, I always joke you should read each of these questions aloud to yourself, just to, get oriented. And he said halfway through, his reader said, man, this is tough stuff. Yeah, that's kind of not what you need while you're taking the test, right? So anyways. All right, we got another one here, Dane. A BD is a member of selling syndicate. Syndicate members are always at risk for unsold securities. So that's the first thing I think.
Western or Eastern?
Too bad. Tyler and Dane and Landon can't form a syndicate. Go down there and take the test together. I told you I'm demented. I've been doing this too long, Dane, but they didn't make me take the test at the DMV yesterday when I stopped in Kingman, Arizona. I was right there when they opened at 7:30 from my Vegas trip with the, register the car, take it. But last time I had to take the test, the driver's license test, I failed it by 1 point. I did something I tell you guys never to do. I changed my answer, missed it by 1. She said, well, do you want to study before I even took it? I said, well, no, I'm a pretty good test taker. So I think I'll just take it straight up using test tips and tricks and see how I do. And she goes, okay, so do you want to come back later? I go, well, no, I only missed it by 1. So is there a 30-day wait period? She goes, what? I teach people to pass. They have to wait 30 days. And she goes, well, no. I said, so I could just take it again right now, right? She goes, well, yeah, you could. I said, okay, well, let me try it again. Let's cue this thing back up. I missed it by 1 again.
Come on.
Listen, so I said, hey, this is my second time. I'm already seeing repeat questions. Questions that I missed last time that are on the second version of this thing. I said, how deep is the Q bank? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, if there's already repeat questions, I mean, how many of these exams are there? And she goes, there's 5 of them. I said, and you're giving me the answer key and rationale each time I miss. The thing I teach people to prepare for, you don't get told what you missed and why, and right. And she said, well, there's 5 of them. Well, the guy next to me, he had taken it twice. I said, listen, my friend, between the 2 of us, we have 4 of the 5 potential drops. What I think we should do is form a syndicate. He goes, what's that? I said, we pool our resources and, we go out in the parking lot. And she goes, are you guys going out there to study? I go, call it what you will. We came back in, woo, aced it. Right. So, hey, I was prepared in Kingman yesterday. If they said, Dean, you want to take the test? I go, give it to me. I'll do it straight up without reading the booklet if I can. Then I noticed, this is kind of scary, that my motorcycle license is still valid. That's probably, it doesn't sunset. Probably should. I haven't been on a bike in a long time. I go, what's the L? She goes, oh, that's your motorcycle. I was like, I still got that? That's crazy. All right. So at a firm commitment. So this is called a bot deal. This is a weird, Dane, for 66.
Yeah, that is weird.
This is more of it shows up on a 20 or a 7.
That might have been the variable question that was part of the test, but that was one of the tests I remember.
Zuckerberg at Facebook, when he did the IPO Facebook, said this is going to be a firm commitment underwriting. The legendary 24 at Morgan Stanley, a guy named Michael Grimes. And so Morgan Stanley Syndicate said to the issuer, Facebook, we will give you a firm commitment at $38 a share. Now, this issue was not hot. IPO either stands for instant profit opportunity, hot issue, or IPO stands for it's probably overpriced, sticky issue. Now we don't refer in the business anymore to this as hot and sticky, except OGs like Dean. But every time I say hot or sticky, some modern compliance guy, oh, we don't call it that anymore. I go, hey, whatever.
Yeah, but I worked at Merrill Lynch. Everything was hot and sticky.
There you go. There you go. So, Anyways, the it was it ended up being a sticky deal, and the syndicate had to stabilize the issue. They put in a stabilizing bid at 38. Now, in any other thing than a firm commitment underwriting, this would be pegging. It would be a fraudulent device. But nobody's going to buy the brand new Facebook stock at 38 if they can get in the secondary market at, 34 or 32 or 30. And so Michael Grimes came out, he said in the third day, by the way, it should be a red flag to you that it's at 38 and it's not going up. It's staying at 38 for 3 days. He said, we've been stabilizing the issue and we're going to remove our stabilizing bid and it will find its natural price. So, when you join me in underwriting, the first thing you should ask Morgan Stanley, this was a huge syndicate, is you say, if you're Merrill Lynch, for example, Dean says at Merrill Lynch was a part of that syndicate. And Merrill Lynch would say to Morgan Stanley, what kind of syndicate is it? Is it a firm commitment deal or best efforts? Right? Best efforts means I'm going to do my damnedest to sell these securities, but I'm not willing to buy them personally. It's a firm commitment underwriting. Let's say we're offering 10 million shares. You're 25%. Dean at Merrill Lynch says, Dean, we'll take down 25% of the deal, 2.5 million shares. Now, in a firm commitment deal, Dane, what goes down stays down, right? If Dean tells me Merrill's going to take down 25% of the deal, they're going to sell 25% of the deal. So, Dane calls me and I say, hey, I'm just checking in with Syndicate Merrill. How you doing? And Merrill says, will we? I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. You got a mouse in your pocket? There's no we. You said you're going to do 2.5 million shares and you're going to do 2.5. And Dean says, well, we only did 1.5 million. I go, no, you didn't. You did 2.5. You said, well, no, we did 1.5 million. I go, no. You go, what happens to the other 1 million shares? They go to heaven with the puppies? I say, no, Dean, they go into your inventory and you say, attention brokers, blue light special. By the way, the syndicate for Facebook lost $200 million. Now, they wouldn't have said 38 if they thought they could get unless they thought they could get 45 or whatever, right? I mean, so, Morgan Stanley doesn't lose money often on that kind of a thing. Did the same thing with Twitter. They did a firm commitment underwriting, $10 billion in bonds for Axe Holdings, Elon. His banker, again, is Michael Grimes. That guy's the Silicon Valley banker guy. And they sold $10 billion worth of bonds. Same thing. I say, how many bonds do you want to take down? And there's still billions of dollars worth of bonds that are sitting on the balance sheet of these broker dealers and banks that they weren't able to distribute. So the point is you actually own them. Future sales, is that a prohibited practice? The BD holds 25%. That is a prohibited practice.
Yeah.
That's called trying to make a fraudulent distribution of the security. So here's another big word in Latin, bona fide. Bona fide is good faith. So you're supposed to make a good faith distribution of all those securities to the public. The only reason you should still have them is if you couldn't sell them. Period, full stop. I think the car business, as far as I know, doesn't have a code of conduct. But, I had a lot of dealers as clients of mine. And one of those vehicles that's really cool is a Ford GT. And, I've seen many Ford GTs on the Ford dealer showroom that aren't for sale. They're withholding them from the public. In our business, I'd make you put the Ford GT on the lot and you'd have to sell it for the manufacturer suggested retail price. I'm dating myself again, Dane. But BMW had a beautiful car called a Z8. This thing is gorgeous. And in the Bay Area, where I spent most of my career, I saw 8 of them. And 5 of them had dealer plates, meaning these dealers are not selling them. Now, I bet if you offer that dealer a big enough premium, he would take the dealer plate off it and sell it to you, right? But in our business, he wouldn't be allowed to sell that car for anything other than the public offering price. He wouldn't be able to sell it to an employee of the dealership or any financial dependent family member of the dealership. He wouldn't be able to sell it to an attorney of the dealership, an accountant to the dealership. He would have to make a bona fide distribution of that vehicle to the public, right? So, I told you about my little sports car. I paid extra to get that first one off the boat of Japan. And even today, I pull in the Toyota dealer. The guys go, wow, we haven't seen one of those in a long time. I go, yeah, there you go. All right, Landon's back. I think we got Landon on audio. Hey, Landon, thanks for joining us. Sorry you had a little glitch there. We do this. I call it now. The new name for this is the weekly Q&A jam session, and I'm thinking we're going to do it Wednesdays. I know 4 o'clock Mountain Time, which is Arizona time. So you're welcome to join us from a location. Might be a little more, but I was impressed with the lighting on your car. That was pretty good lighting. Audio, not so much. And thanks for Dean's suggestion. Once we killed the audio video feed, it was I'm gonna have to remember that Dean trick for me if I remember in my car kill the video.
Well, even if you're in a bad connection, like like at a hotel or something, it's like we always go, everybody cut your video because
Yeah.
it has to stream that video back and forth.
Yeah, and hey, Landon, feel free to join us in the future. If you have any questions, just send them to Dean@guruexam.com. All right, gentlemen, anything else? Hey, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, please
Fun
hey,
session.
look at
I have questions. We'll just shoot the shit.
look at the look at the email that I sent you to remind
listen,
you to
Anybody's
me a
watching this
session.
video. This is my video. So I told you I got people, and Kaplan, if you're listening, I was teaching a class. I didn't kill the mic. And I did say that I thought untoward. I just said I had a young lady who was Russian, and we're kind of friends. And I was joking about my Russian naval flask that I bought when I was in Russia, and it's the daily allowance of vodka for a Russian naval commander. And what I had said that Kaplan took exception to, I had said that sometimes when I'm traveling, I'll fill that up with tequila and I'll drink the whole thing. And I think, man, and now I'm in charge of a Russian nuclear sub. No wonder they have problems. Anyways, I think I said I get drunk off my ass or something. And Kaplan said, Dean, that's inappropriate language for a Kaplan class. I said, okay, got it. Hey, good news. This is our Zoom video feed and we can do whatever we want. Anything else?
Ohio State, first blood.
All right. Hey, Ohio State, man, I got to tell you, Dean, they just look good, didn't they? I mean, they look like a pro team out there against Oregon. I don't think it's good to take to wait on this stuff. Sometimes
I know I don't feel good. I picked Texas at the beginning of the season to go win the championship, but I don't think.
Well, Texas is pretty good too.
Yeah, it depends which one shows up, but they're looking good.
Yeah. I'm a Sun Devil, and my Sun Devils, we tried so hard.
That's right. I'm a Purdue
That was such a
Boilermaker.
good
We
game.
never stand a chance.
I thought we were going to get blown out, and then all of a sudden we respond, and then our running back. Oh man, that kid was incredible. Throwing up. He's put me back in, and
yeah, that's right. I saw him
man,
puking his
what a game.
brains out. I'm like, what's going on?
I'm a Buckeye, so I'm loving.
Oh, there you
it.
go.
Boy,
Oh yeah. Well, what are you doing on this call, man?
Yeah. He's probably like me. I got it queuing up, and don't you hate that, Danny? You're probably like me. We got it queued up, and Dean just gave away the Drew Flows
What?
first blood. I
Oh yeah, you're recording it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was a Warrior season ticket holder for a long time. I have a friend named Clarice, and I finally had to tell her because I would go to the VIP bar or something. I have a cocktail, and I'm missing an action or whatever, or maybe I am not at the game. I've recorded it, and she would send me a text like, "Hey, your Warriors are looking very good." I said, and every time she did that, we would lose. I said, "So Clarice," I said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but you're kind of a Warrior cooler. You get us off our game. I don't want any text from you. I love you, but don't send me any text about a Warrior game in progress. And don't send me any text about a Warrior game that, isn't, it's like the tonight, because Dean may wake up in the morning and watch it. So just hold it. And, and I said, if you don't, I'm going to have to start blocking you because you're a real downer. You're texting me.
So you got to stay off social media and everything else.
Well, your point, Dan. We can't blame you for that, Dean. That happens too, where like, oh man.
It's part of the game.
Yeah. Sometimes it has advantage, Dean, though, because, I won't say I actually have done this to my brother, but, we'll be watching the game and unbeknownst to my brother, I actually already know the result. I feel like I got my own version of the sting.
I did that to a buddy of mine who's a school teacher. It was on delay, and I could see on my phone the alerts when we were watching baseball. And I go, I bet you he's going to hit a triple. He's like, no way, I'll bet you. And then all of a sudden,
well, hey, listen, Dane, you got a lot to be happy with. Weren't they talking about firing your coach as little as 3 games ago or something?
Yeah.
You're a coach of the Buckeyes.
Yeah, there's not a high tolerance. For
what's more important, Dane, as a Buckeye, beating Michigan or winning the national championship?
Oh, beating Michigan.
I hear that's it, right? So who knows? The guy might still be on the hot seat, but boy, he's sure got your young men to respond well. I mean, I'm impressed with your coach. I mean, You know, by the way, I thought it was ridiculous when the guy had one loss. Was one still one loss just to Michigan?
No, it was two. He had another
Yeah.
loss in there from to Oregon before.
Oh, that's
I
right.
think he's redeemed
Yeah.
himself. I think I got to take Ohio State to get it all done because I mean, man, based on how they looked, I mean, they look like they got it all together now. So
Well, it's all based on these injuries too, man.
yeah,
Everybody's like
yeah.
challenged.
But
with
boy,
it. Hey,
now Dane, boy, it's become like pro sports with these name and likeness images. Like the portal now. Like hey, what are you going to give me to come?
we're managing a sports fund. So the cool thing about that is we have tickets to the national championship and
Yeah.
the Super Bowl.
Oh wow,
So
yeah, name and likeness.
I got
Right.
to get this test done so I can
Yeah.
have a drink.
I used to sit on the floor for many years with the Warriors, and it was funny. I invited a guy to the Warrior game, and he was a compliance guy. He goes, "Man, Dean, what do those floor tickets cost? Because I'm not allowed to accept like a gift of more than X." I go, "Well, you have no problem because the tickets I'm offering you are not on the floor. They're about 20 rows back. So you're not going to be sitting on the floor with me. You're going to be sitting." So, oh, those are fun. I used to yell and scream and holler a lot. And we had a guy named Donald Foyle who was one of our centers, and we had traded for these new guys. Our coach at the time was Don Nelson, and Don was like me, likes to smoke a cigar every now and again. And so we had a private area where you could go, just for, basically Nelly and myself and a couple guys that were okay to do this. Otherwise, you'd have to climb the rafters to go to the smoking spot, and it's mainly for cigarette smokers. But anyways, I always felt this was kind of an honor. He said, Donald told me the new guy said, "Hey, is that guy on the baseline going to be yelling all night long?" And he said, I told him, "Yeah, you're going to be yelling all night long." And then he said that Nelly said, "And Dean is mostly right." I go, "I'll take that." Anyways, I was talking about my Dunleavy story. Dunleavy, I said, "Hey, Mike, how about some help on defense?" That's what I said. Mike, who sit next to me at the time, he said something totally different. I mean, like, used a lot of bad words. And I looked at him and I said, "What the hell are you doing?" He said, "Well, I said so much the same thing." I go, "Man, my friend, that is not the same thing. How about help on defense and calling somebody what you just called him and made references to his mom is not." And I said, "I want you to know something. When you get tossed, I'm not going with you. I'm going to say, hey, that's not my friend. I don't know what the heck he's thinking, right? Kick him out of here. Oh my goodness. Now, every once in a while you get a heat on, you say something inappropriate. Nothing like that. I mean, I'm not that stupid, but anyways, one of the security guys said, "Dean, we just want to remind you there are families behind you." I said, "Oh, okay. I'll take it down." Go to G, PG, G. All
Dean,
right.
you used to go to the Warriors games back when they were bad.
Well, people forget, but then it was like being a lobster in boiling water. When I first started my floor tickets, we weren't that good. And I think the floor tickets, I sat next, Chris Cohan was the owner at the time, and I was on the baseline. I sat next to his kid a lot of times because his kid would be, on the baseline, he'd be somewhere. I used to tease the kid. I feel so bad. I used to say, "Someday this will all be yours." And anyways, we didn't, we still weren't good. And then Lake bought the team, and I was in the VIP bar. And I said to Tony, my server, many years, I said, "I need a big screen." This is 2010. I said, "I need a nice big screen, a piece of real estate here because the Giants were in the World Series." And it was the same night there was a Warrior game. So I'm watching the World Series. And this guy comes up to me, and I kind of thought like maybe he's hitting on me or something. I go, he goes, "What do you think about the new ownership group?" And I go, "I'm not a big fan of a syndicate, where me and my 20 buddies come up with 20 million apiece for a total of 400 million to go buy the Warriors." I said, "I can't believe that Larry Ellison lost this auction to buy the Golden State Warriors. I mean, how often does Larry Ellison lose an auction?" I said, "I'm more about sole proprietorship ownership. I wanted Larry. I want a guy who can drop 400 million. He's got 100 billion behind that. So I really wanted Larry." I'm going on and on and on. He goes, "Well, Dean, I hear you're a season ticket holder, and I just want to come over and introduce myself. I'm Joe Lacob. I'm the general partner." I go, "Okay, I got to walk that back." Well, in a gazillion years, Chris Cohan would never ask me what I thought about anything. I mean, so we're off to, I guess, a better start. It was funny because, we kind of bonded a little bit. And then I said to him each time we got a little better, I'd say, "Man, I'm missing Larry less and less." You know, by the way, he's a venture capitalist. The other thing I said is, I read, I was pretty honest with him. I said, style drift. I'm afraid that, you don't know about MBA stuff. And we did a trade. We got Bogut. We never had a big guy. Always talked about getting a big guy. And then we got Bogut. And then we drafted for Steph. And then I was complaining about the trade. He goes, Dean, it's not the trade. The trade isn't the piece of this. It's the draft pick I got. Oh, that draft pick ended up being Draymond. I'm like, okay, this guy kind of knows what he's up to, and then hired Jerry West. But anyways, we had another young man named Monte Ellis. And, it was kind of whether it's going to be Steph teams or Monte's team. And, there's a lot of Warrior fans that like Monte. And then, our coach, Dave, at the time, was telling Steph that he should be, as a superstar, that he should have input with Lacob. And I thought it was funny. He got fired the next day. I said, okay, Lacob ain't going to be having a coach that is going to be just saying that kind of thing and stuff. But we got better and better. And boy, then those tickets went, they were moving the arena in 2015. And when I gave up my tickets, it was like $2,000 a ticket. And there's like 42 games. That's like $100,000 in Warrior tickets. And I was never good, Dean, on turning those into clients. I don't know why I can't do that. I always was the top producer. I always thought in the back of my mind, I've met many, many billionaires and millionaires. I don't know if it's because I'm just not good at sales in that environment. I'm better at like, I don't know you and I can close you, not like we're having cocktails at the Warrior game. But, when I'm sitting next to like Tim Cook, and, Vivek Ramadevi, and I'm going, oh man, this neighborhood is gentrifying. I'm like, I'm going to be out of here pretty soon. So, but boy, what a ride. So, had my stenciled VIP parking spot. I used to park with the players, and it was funny. One time I got drunk and I took Bart back to my place. Bart's like 30 minutes, and everybody said they were worried about me. I go, don't be worried about me. I don't drive. I take Bart. And it was funny. The police officer was on the platform with me, and he said, Dean, I'm going to wait for this BART train to come, but this is kind of stupid for you to be up here on this BART platform at like, I think the games, they kick you out of there about midnight or something. I said, yeah, but I'm dating myself. That's before you had Uber. You didn't have, you call limo, it's going to be another 2 hours, right? So,
Right.
Landon, we got a direct message from him. No? Okay. All right. Well, this has been hey, I like this. This is a heck of a lot of fun. Hey, if you're
Hey,
watching,
make sure to give me a time, okay?
I certainly will. Dean. If you're watching the replay, I promise you, we don't always just, talk about sports. We do actually focus on content. Tonight we got a little off the rails, but join us for any Q&A, weekly jam. Bring your content questions. We'll certainly take care of them. Dan, I do think the question, that last one you had, is kind of odd for 66.
Okay, so that was a control question then.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it is a prohibited, to answer your original question, though, it is a prohibited. I think that the reason that would be justified on a NASA exam is because NASA is really about unethical business practices. That is a lot of questions, and it is an unethical business practice to not make a bona fide distribution of the security to the public.
Okay.
If we didn't have that rule, the way I always think of Dana, you'd never see the good stuff because, I'd keep it for myself. And your client says, oh, that must be so cool to be a broker and get first dibs on all those hot IPOs. I said, well, no, it's actually a disadvantage. I mean, I don't get that stuff. We got to give it to our clients. One of our legendary ladies in our business was Mary Meeker. She was the head of research at Morgan Stanley. And she quit and became a general partner at Kleiner Perkins, where she resides today. And she was being interviewed about her glory days at Morgan Stanley. She was known as Queen of the Internet. Everybody wants to know what Mary thinks about, Amazon going public, that kind of thing. And I was shocked by her reply. I thought she was going to reminisce fondly about Morgan Stanley. And she says, God, no, I don't miss it at all. There were so many rules. And my husband certainly doesn't miss it because there were all kinds of investments my spouse wanted to make that Morgan Stanley compliance would not allow him to make. And now as a venture capitalist, I can do whatever the heck I want. And my husband can do whatever the heck he wants. And I would have thought, man, if I were Morgan Stanley compliance, I'd go, ooh, I didn't realize Mary was that bent, about me not allowing her to do certain things, right? So, So they were talking about her getting the band back together, right? So there you go, right? Some people choose to leave our business because of the regulatory framework. I had some private equity guys who were setting up a broker dealer, and the guy's a billionaire, and he was asking me my thoughts, and I go, I'm not so sure. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but now you're creating a regulated entity. The entity you have now is, not regulated. You can kind of do whatever you'd like. Now you're going to have this entity that is regulated. So I'm not so sure if I were you, I would do it. But hey, Dean's not a billionaire. That's probably why you're a billionaire and I'm not, right? So all right, guys. Dean, you want to do that right now?
Yeah, let's do it now.
Let me pull up my schedule here.
Next Thursday, you got anything like?
Let me check. Okay.
We're buying our first ATS next week. We're buying
cool.
it has a license.
I've got let's see, that's an hour. I have an opening at 11. You want to do something at 11?
11 your time?
Yeah, Mountain Time. Were you in East Coast?
No, I'm Central.
Central, so 1 hour difference. So 11 for me would be what, noon for you?
Do you have something a little later? Or?
Sure. How about early afternoon? How about 3 o'clock your time? 2 o'clock my time.
Can you do 4 o'clock my time or no?
I can, but I got to tell you, if I have a invite with my brother to go to the Moose Lodge for a cocktail, I'm going to be upset. 1 hour, boom. And what'd you say? You want 4 o'clock your time?
4 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Mountain.
Oh, that's okay. That'll work. I will make it work. Okay. All right, hold on. Boom. And I don't think
and by then I'll know. Yeah.
And we only have one Dean in the system, I think. I got you twice. I got you as Dean at Green Tech, and I got you at Dean at GTT. Which email?
That's okay. Both of those go to the same box. So
okay, there you go. And so I've created that. We can settle up later, but you should get an invite for 3 o'clock Thursday.
Okay, appreciate it. Man.
All right.
Okay.
Dane, anything else?
Weekend.
You bet. Dane, you got anything else for tonight?
No, thank you, Dean. They love
your company. Join us again. Join us again on our Tuesdays or our weekly live streams or whatever. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Thank you. They love you at Ameriprise.
Yeah, good debrief too. Good debrief. So I always appreciate it. I'm not allowed to ask you what was question 25, but I am allowed to ask, hey, what could we have done a better job helping you with? So that's good debrief as well. All right, everybody, I'm going to go watch the game. Good news, Dean has left, so he won't be able to blow it for us about what's going on.
Bastard.
I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.